Alright guys, Atomic Mass Games has a new panel to play for the Brotherhood box. I'm going to do some fast hot takes because who doesn't love low effort content, especially when it's got exciting news here. So let's talk about Avalanche, Exodus, and Lady Mastermind and the tactics cards coming in their new box. Alright, first up we have Avalanche. Avalanche is a very simple character. As you can tell, his card's not even fully covered in text. Pretty uncommon these days for Marvel Crisis Protocol characters. But he is all about AoE attacks. So he's a 3-threat, 4/3/3 defenses. Little bit higher defenses for a 3-threat than we're used to seeing, but not by much. Or I should say well in line with 3 threats defensively. He's got a range 3 4-die beam that has wild stun, a very punishing mechanic, stopping power generation, and then he's beam should make it easy. A beam gainer makes it easy for him to gain power, and then his spender only goes up 1 dice, but it's an AOE 2 attack for 3 cost. This is actually very cheap for an AOE attack. Usually AOE attacks are like priced out of you ever being able to really afford them. So that's interesting. He also has a 2-cost superpower that pushes size 4 or less within 3, pushes them short. That's essentially the entire game because the size 5s are Sentinels and Dormammu, and Sentinels can't be pushed by superpowers already, so this just can't push Dormammu. And then he has Falling Debris, which is like a worse version of Goblin's Trick or Treat ability. If you end an advance within 3 of him, he can pay 3 power and pick a size 3 or less that you're within 2 of, and he can throw it at you. It's notably worse than Goblins because it's range 3 instead of range 4, and it only triggers off of advance, not advance and place. And unlike like booby traps or Mephisto's tricks and traps, it doesn't trigger on every kind of movement, only advances. I think this will obviously be good with any kind of like bow character that can move characters into his range. He also combos well with bow characters because then you can line them up for beams. This also triggers Magneto's leadership because he can destroy terrain on your opponent's turn potentially and cause the power generation to happen on your opponent's turn, which typically it doesn't. You don't often destroy pieces of terrain on your opponent's turn, or not relying on your opponent to destroy terrain so that you can generate power. I think he's all right. So Brotherhood 3 threats currently, like the premier one is Mystique, with probably the second most played being Quicksilver. His job is very different from those 2 characters. I like playing heavy beam teams personally, so like beams and AoEs are pretty cool, or I think they're just like a fun way to play the game. But with the new crisis shapes, people clump up less. They still clump up. Like people that are like, oh, Crimson Dynamo's dead for good, I think are wrong. So people clump up less, and he's a character that kind of requires you to clump up. But because he has both beam and AoE attacks, it's hard to like set up your formation in a way that both avoids being beamed and avoids being AoE'd. Like, he should be able to spend a movement action and get one of these 2 things. Get at least 2 models with one of these 2 abilities. Oh, the other 3-threat that's often played is Pyro. And I think kind of because there's those 3 threats, he's going to those 3 valuable 3-threats in the faction that he will kind of struggle to see play. He has a cool card coming up that we'll talk about a little bit later that combos well with Pyro, so maybe you'll see those 2 running around. But I'm curious if you will play 4 3-threats in faction in Brotherhood going forward. But he's cool. He seems like mid-power level. There's nothing egregious about this character. I don't know, he's just like a fun AoE dude. All right, moving on to Exodus. I don't know how long I'm going to talk about Exodus. He was spoiled in the Adepticon discussion is where he was spoiled. And so me and Nate talked about him on our live stream following the Adepticon PowerPoint presentation. The character is interesting. First of all, his model is gorgeous. I would scroll up, but there's no model pictures in this panel to play for some reason. He has a lot in common with Cable. So he's the same threat as Cable, so he's a 5 threat. Cable has a couple things that make him Cable, which are his range 2 teleport, his throwing of terrain. He has like an X cost terrain throw, kind of like Magneto does, except his is once per turn, so it just pays cost equal to the thing, or equal to the size of the thing he's throwing. And then he also has the telekinetic shield, where when allies are attacked nearby, he can add 2 dice to them. This character has all 3 of those things as well. Their base attacks are quite different, and I think their durability is also fairly different, as Cable has 1 very weak defense, and Exodus is 4/4/4 across the board. Exodus also has multiple ways to heal himself. So I do think that makes him, while on paper he looks very similar and boring to Cable, I think it makes him pretty fundamentally different from how Cable plays, in that you can get punished for not one-rounding this character like very, very badly. And that's at least interesting. He has much less damage output than Cable, like range 2 6-die builder, range 4 5-die gainer. The gainer's cool because it has the wild pull, which means like you can use it to clear points, and it pushes size 4s. But also, like, if this character's in melee, he can potentially heal 3 hit points on his turn, every turn, because his psychic vampirism doesn't need you to connect for it to heal itself. It's just if you resolve the attack, you heal 1. So that's cool. I am curious to see how he plays, and if you can kind of afford him and Magneto, because the character is incredibly power hungry. He wants to throw every turn, he wants to teleport every turn, and then he wants to spend the rest of his power protecting your team with telekinetic shield. So he's going to be extremely, extremely power hungry, and obviously Magneto feeds that better than, say, like Mystique, their other leadership. But you're talking about 11 points then, because he's a 5, Magneto's a 6. So I'm not sure how much you're going to be able to fill that in. I think my biggest disappointment with Exodus is that he doesn't seem to have like a strong theme. He has a little bit of like kind of vampire-ness with the psychic vampirism attack, but that's all of his flavor. He's just kind of generic, good ability, or just generic abilities kind of on the character, because we've seen all these abilities before. It makes it hard for me to be excited for him, even if he turns out to be quite good. I guess just like his model being cool looking is going to have to carry me most of the way. All right. And then the character in this box that everybody is excited about, that's the wildest design here, and definitely the character I'm most interested in, is Lady Mastermind. So Lady Mastermind has a super cool gainer. It's range 5, range 5 dice. It's a gainer, gives you 1 power. It has the Shuri rider on it, so if it does more than 1 damage, it instead drops to 1 damage. You see this on like Black Cat and Shuri are the 2 models that currently have this thing, so it only ever does max 1 damage. And like unlike those other attacks that are both 6, it's 5 dice, so it's still only like 60-70% to do that damage. It's not as guaranteed, but it has 2 more interesting triggers on it. So it has Mind Over Matter, so before you deal damage, you can pull 2 special conditions from the target to deal 2 extra damage. Important to note here that it's not up to 2, so you can't pull 1 and do 1 damage. It's you have to pull 2 conditions, then they do 2 more. So this does either 1 damage or 3 damage. You can't like split the difference here. And then it has a wild effect. For each wild, you can give it bleed, poison, shock, or incinerate. So you get to like, if you make an attack roll at somebody that's covered in conditions, and then you roll 3 wilds, you have no problem pulling 2 conditions, because the 2 conditions you pull are probably going right back on, or you're killing the character. I think this makes this character really, really interesting in a lot of factions, especially ones that do a lot of conditions, like Hydra, or Midnight Suns does a lot of conditions. Shield at least used to hand out a lot of bleed randomly. Avengers can have condition-y builds. So I think it makes the character like, I think this builder is just really, really interesting, or gainer is really, really interesting. Her spender is probably the least used thing on her card, but it being an AoE 2 6 dice attack means that there will be games where like you just have 3 or 4 people in this thing and it's like hard to turn down that many dice. But I don't think you're going to use it a ton. It has like a wild advance on it, which means it's not super reliable. 6 dice is like right around a coin flip to succeed on a wild trigger. A little bit better than a coin flip, I believe. And then we get to her like signature ability, and the reason that this character is actually a damage dealer despite having only a 1 damage gainer. So this is an active superpower. It costs X. You essentially pick a model within 5, and then you pay power equal to their mystic defense. And then you get to make an attack measured from them that has the same number of dice as a 0 cost attack that they have. So like you pick, let's say you pick Hulk, you have to pick a model within 2 of Hulk to attack, and then you make his 0 cost attack in terms of number of dice. You don't get any of its triggers, any of its restrictions, none of that. It just cares about range, dice, and then you measure the range from the character you targeted. So this is a huge wordy paragraph that essentially says that. There are a couple characters this is incredibly strong against, and you're not going to want to play those characters into Lady Mastermind. So first of all, any of the like Def 3 big dice attack characters, like Hulk, who is like, you get a 7 dice attack for 3 power on a 4 threat. That seems very good. Also, this is actionless. This doesn't cost an action, so in an ideal world, she's doing the 2 1 damage pings, and then doing a like 7 die attack measured from your Hulk. And then also, other characters are really strong against. Red Skull 2. Red Skull 2, even though he can pick Mystic Defense mode, this only looks at your printed stat, so that's a 6 die attack for 2 power. That's pretty good. And then probably the best character to use it on is like Bob for Bob's Rocket, which is Bob's Rocket is 8 or 9 dice, and it only costs 2. Don't bring Bob against this lady because, again, because it doesn't care about any of the triggers. It won't throw her. She won't daze from it. She won't. She doesn't need a loaded token. She doesn't need your Bob to have a loaded token. What else is good? Shuri's pretty good just because of like the extreme range of it. So if you can draw range 5 to Shuri, you get to make a 6 die attack at anyone within 5 of Shuri, which like that should cover the entire table. Especially with the way that like Shuri is played, where she's trying to be within 4 of your entire team. Now you don't get the push from it, but also you're not locked to the max 1 damage. So I think that makes Lady Mastermind kind of a damaging powerhouse because of 2 auto point attacks that maybe could do 3 points in the right scenarios, or if you are, like playing like Hydra or a heavy conditions faction. She then also has Brain Fog, which is Shapeshifter, which means there's now 2 Shapeshifter models in Brotherhood. So this is the same thing that's printed on Mystique that says your opponent can't do reactive stuff, no reactive superpowers, no reactive team tactics cards. So you can't Eye in the Sky away from her. You can't Trickster away from her. She's really good at killing some of these like elusive characters that rely on their superpowers to protect them. You can't raise shields. She gets to just like attack the core defensiveness of you. There's no tricks. She also has the like pay to see through my Mystic defense thing, which is weird for her because she's a 3/3/4. And so you like most of the characters that have this are like Mysterio, where Mysterio is 1/1/5. And when you're paying that 2 power, you're getting a lot of benefit. Like the defense is really cratering. Or like Professor X, who is 2/2/6, and like you're getting 4 defense off of your opponent for paying that 2 power. So like when you're trying to kill those characters, you attack them with builders, and you just pay the 2 power, and you're likely to get your 2 power back and then be able to pay again. Here, it only lowers the defense by 1, so I'm not sure how often you pay for it, and I'm not sure how much it actually protects her. So, like, yes, if you're flush with power, sure, why not? Like, lower the defense by 1, get a free Incinerate for 2 power, especially if you're a character that doesn't spend their power super well. But early, this character is just 4/4/4 defense. And then, lastly, she has a range 3 aura that when enemy characters roll skulls, she gets a power on attack, defense, dodge, any of those things, if they're within 3 of her. And only 1 power, no matter how many skulls they roll. I think this character's weakness is that she struggles with power gain because she has a gainer, which means her ideal turn where she gets to stand still, holding a point, is 1 power from the power phase, and then 2 attacks for 3 total power, and then trying to pick somebody within 5 that has Mystic defense 3 or less to get her extra attack. So, I mean, there'll be lots of games where you struggle to make your extra attack because of her power gain thing. So maybe power gain factions might be good for her, like, again, Hydra with Red Skull 2, instead of under the Strucker leadership where you get to hand out lots of conditions. Or, but you could play her in Red Skull 1. Could be kind of interesting. And double up on all power and always have the superpower. I think there's lots of interesting places to play her. I think she's a really interesting model. I've heard some people say like that the superpower is busted, but I think they're kind of misunderstanding it. And you just don't play the really, really egregious examples of it. I wouldn't play Bob into her. I think playing Bob into her is a straight mistake. But outside of that, I don't think that like playing Red Skull or Hulk into her is that wrong, because those models are already so strong that they probably overcome what she gains from that. So I'm not sure you actually even play around this ability that much. And then she's obviously, somewhat fragile for a 4 threat. She's 11 health, 3/3/4, can die to throws really easily. I'm excited to try her out. I think I'm most excited to try her out in Midnight Suns. Being able to bump for a little bit extra mobility and take her gunshots. Plus, Midnight Suns hands out a lot of bleed, and she can hand out bleed. So I think that's really interesting. And so she might be able to trigger that extra damage a lot, or set up Blade, where she hits her wild and be like, okay, here's bleed. Now Blade is really threatening to take this character off the table. All right, let's look at tactics cards. First of all, we have Mirage. When enemy character attacks an allied character within 3 of an allied Lady Mastermind during the modified dice step, Lady Mastermind can pay 2 to play this card. For each skull in the attack roll, you change 1 result to a blank. For each dice result change, the enemy character loses a power. Then after this is resolved, if you change 1 or more dice face, the defending character may advance short. So, this is incredibly specifically corner case. It's a defensive card that you attack a friend of mine near Lady Mastermind, you roll a skull, and I can move the model away to safety, as well as reduce the damage from that attack. I think it's kind of too niche to see play, but it's a cool effect and can blow out some characters, especially reroll focused characters, because keep in mind, the window for playing this in the modified dice step, because you're modifying the attacker's dice, is essentially the last step. The defender modifying attacker's dice is the only thing that goes after this is recal. So it can let somebody that has really cooked their dice with bought rerolls or double bubble or something that's all right, it's a 5-die attack, I have 5 hits, right? But I have a skull here because I crit, and you can swing that and make that 5 hits, 4 hits. Maybe your character lives on 1, and then you can lose them short, hopefully out of range of the next attack. I don't think it's going to see play in Brotherhood, as Brotherhood has a lot of really good tactics cards, but the card's not bad by any means. All right, here we go. Here's the card I'm excited about. Pawns go first. This is the new Brotherhood reactive card. During the end phase, any number of allied Brotherhood of Mutants characters with threat value 3 or less can pay 1 to play this card. You get to choose another allied Brotherhood of Mutants character that's worth 5 threat or greater within 3 of the characters that played the card, and then they either get to advance short towards the character, remove 1 damage and 1 special condition from the chosen character. The chosen character gains 1 power. So either you advance the 3 threat towards the 5, remove a damage and a condition from the 5 threat, or give the 5 threat a power. So I think this is really good in combination with the other Brotherhood card, their version of Mothership, Asteroid M. It's called Asteroid M. So between those two, you have the faction suddenly has a lot of mobility. by being able to move its little guys around to help you play the objectives, and a little bit more resiliency, where you can essentially move power from the little guys to the big guys to get more splashy effects. Or I actually think the middle version of this is the strongest. Removing a damage in a special condition from like Magneto or Exodus are the two big, most likely here. I guess it's good on Juggernaut, although Juggernaut's immune to almost every condition you'd really want to give him, which are stun and stagger. He's only pseudo immune to stagger. The important thing here is that this is played in the end phase, so there's no turn one jank with this. You can't play it until after turn one's concluded. And there are pretty tight threat bands here. But overall, I'm optimistic that this card is strong. I like its design a lot. So typically like modal cards are usually like they're weaker effects. And then you're paying a lot for the ability to choose based on the situation. But here, because so many things can pay, and every 3 threat could pick the same 5+ threat. So like if Blob got thrown off a point, but it's near but Magneto's still on that point, Blob could pay 1 and walk back on. Like Pyro could pay 1 to pull Magneto's stagger and heal him 1, and then Mystique, who's flooded on power, because she's always flooded on power, she doesn't have great ways to spend it, could hand a power to Magneto, making Magneto stronger. I think it's cool. I hope it's good. I think it's a really interesting design, and really fits with like kind of Brotherhood's theme of there's not a lot of super good 4 threats in the faction. It's like what arguably Lady Mastermind is probably their good 4. Saber? I guess Sabretooth 2 is good, but again, very power hungry. But I think their most played models, or at least their most interesting models to me, are like their little guys and their big guys. And this like playing off that factor that the faction is like kind of built of a bunch of little guys and then 1 or 2 big guys. I think it's really interesting. All right, last card here, Genetic Superiority. When this card is included in your squad, if your squad includes both Exodus and Max Eisenhart. Max Eisenhart is the new alter ego name for Magneto. I don't know when he stopped being Eric Lencher, but ever since he's been put in this game, he's under this alias. When the card's played, it's set near the battlefield instead of discarded. Once per turn, when an allied character with 4 threat or less, when an allied character with 4 or less threat suffers 1 or more damage from an enemy effect, choose an allied Brotherhood character of 5 threat or more within 5 and give that character 1 power. So it's kind of like a second leadership. So you play the card, and then you have a reduced version of the A-Force leadership, where when your little guys get hit, you get to hand it to the big guys. And in all honesty, when this card is in play, the big guys are probably just Magneto and Exodus, because that's 11 threat right there. So if you add another 5 threat, how many characters can actually trigger this versus receive it? And they have to be in-faction characters, so like the only other character that can be running around is like Juggernaut. What other characters are above 5 threat in the faction? I don't think anything. Brotherhood. Is anything 5 threat? Scarlet Witch. And Shadow King. Okay, so I guess Scarlet Witch and Shadow King could also be in the list, and then you have like Toad and Blob or something like that, or a 2 and a 3 that can take damage and hand power out. But I think really you're only going to play the 2. So generally, I don't know how much you're going to play both of those characters on the battlefield at the same time. Mostly because I don't think Magneto's very good right now in the current meta. I think he's like among the worst 6 threats in the game. Maybe with the rumored Ballads pass that's coming, maybe Magneto will get better. Or, maybe I'm wrong. But extra power generation on Magneto does increase Magneto's damage. Exodus is also incredibly power hungry, and this is an effect we haven't really seen in the game before, with the ability to get a second leadership going, or something that feels like a second leadership. So you're probably on Magneto leadership, so every time Magneto or Exodus throws something, you're getting the hand power out, and then every time one of the little guys is taking damage from an enemy effect, you're getting the hand of power out to one of the big guys, which kind of helps that circular chain of power going out. I'm excited to see if it's good. It's definitely worth trying, I think. I'm somewhat skeptical just because of the two characters that are required to be on the battlefield for it to see play. Means that the application of this card is somewhat narrow, but the effect is very interesting. And even when they print cards that like aren't going to see competitive tournament play, I I like that they're interesting. Like it should never be they should never print both a weak effect that's also uninteresting. And this is both interesting and it's a strong effect, but it's narrow. So I'm excited about it. I'm not sure I have anything else to say about it. But yeah, genetic superiority, cool. All right, last card, Fault Line. Unaffiliated reactive. During the power phase, an allied Avalanche and an allied Pyro both spend 1 to play this card. This round, Avalanche and Pyro increase the range of Seismokinesis and Flame Jet to be Beam 5. This is their... So Flame Jet and Seismokinesis are the gainers that these two characters have that are Beam 3s. So you add 2 range onto that. So it goes from being 6-inch range beams to being 10-inch range beams. That's very big. Beam 5s are very strong. I think this ability is only okay on Avalanche. Like Avalanche, yeah, maybe we'll pick up one more person in it. But if Pyro is coming out of being dazed, him being able to stoke on top of this, so these are actually 6-die beams, could make this incredibly, incredibly strong. And then keep in mind setting up beams on things in Brotherhood. So neither of these characters have action compression, so like the likelihood that they have some sick, nasty beam seems low. But if you're willing to also play Asteroid M, you can place these characters before they start their activation and get really, really strong beams out of them. Now, whether that's what you want to spend 2 tactics cards doing, I'm somewhat skeptical, but this is really cool. It's cool. And like I like the Brotherhood's theme of having these like team up cards. So I've enjoyed most of the team up cards they've played. Very few of them have ever actually like seen a ton of competitive play. Like there's like the Corvus Proxima one is good. I guess literally Daughters of Thanos is good. Ricochet Blast is good. But most of them, I think, have not been that impactful. And even when they are impactful or strong, like Ricochet Blast, they're extremely corner case because you need to take both models. But I like that Brotherhood is getting this kind of theme of it. First with whatever the Toad and Blobs card is. And then, yeah, so like I like that they're doing more of that. So Fault Line, interesting card. All right, so those are the spoilers for the new box. Let me know what you guys think. Is Brotherhood back? Because I think they're in kind of a rough spot in the meta right now. So is this box going to bring Brotherhood up enough to see more competitive play? Which of these models are you excited to play? Let me know in the comments down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. But even more importantly, don't forget that fun is a finite resource.